This is Pressers by FedNet, where news conferences from the United States Congress become podcast episodes for your listening on your time. Senate Majority Leader John Thune was joined by Louisiana Republican John Kennedy and North Dakota colleague John Hoeven at a February 25th news conference in the Capitol. They discussed energy costs and pending Congressional Review Act resolutions related to the Gulf of America and natural gas. Thune was asked about efforts to find efficiencies in government and a potential government shutdown in March. The following material is protected by copyright.
Good afternoon. The price of pretty much everything that you buy is affected by the cost of energy. If you look at what energy impacts, it certainly impacts the cost of transportation. Fuel impacts and increases the cost of heating and fueling our homes, increases the cost of groceries. Energy is a factor in literally everything that we do and contributes in a big way to the inflationary impact the American people have experienced over the past 4 years. Republicans here in the Senate are very interested in making sure that we have an all-of-the-above energy strategy that puts the focus on making America energy dominant. And what the Democrats, on the other hand, do, if they don't like something, they tax and regulate it to death, and if they do like something, they force a mandate on the American people, like they did with electric vehicles. Well, this week we're going to be focusing on trying to drive down the cost of energy in this country, which, by the way, in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, energy increased 30%. 30%. Think about that and the impact that has on the American people's pocketbooks. They understand and get this issue. They agree with us. And so this week we're going to be moving a couple of continuing Congressional Review Act resolutions of disapproval across the floor. One with Senator Kennedy, one with Senator Hoeven, both of which get at this issue of making energy in this country more available and more affordable to the American people. That is a very different model than what you got for the last 4 years from the Democrats. But Republicans in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, working with President Trump, who has made American energy dominance a key issue of his administration, we're going to be doing everything we can to open up energy production in this country and make it easier, not harder, and less expensive, not more expensive, to create energy dominance for the American people and thereby lower the cost that they pay literally on almost everything that they buy. Starting with Senator Kennedy, and he's going to speak to the CRA resolution of disapproval that we're going to be voting on, and then followed by Senator Hoeven, who I believe is right here too. Senator Kennedy.
Since 1938, we have drilled over 6,000 oil and gas wells in the Gulf of America and built thousands of miles of pipeline. To do that, the oil and gas industry has had to spend billions of dollars to survey every square inch of the seabed in the Gulf. Every square inch has been surveyed and x-rayed. We found 4,000 shipwrecks. In the waning days of the Biden administration, BOEM promulgated a new rule that says if you want to drill a well or build a pipeline, you've got to survey it again. This, of course, increases the cost of drilling, which of course increases the cost of energy because the extra cost is passed on to the consumer, which of course hurts us in our fight to lower prices. This regulation is just one example of why we're experiencing inflation in America today. My resolution would rescind this rule. I'm not saying that the guy who came up with this idea of this rule is the dumbest person in the world, but I am saying that the guy who came up with this idea for this rule better hope that the dumbest person in the world doesn't die. And we're going to kill it.
Senator Hoeven.
So in 2002, the Democrats, without any Republican votes, passed the so-called and completely misnamed Inflation Reduction Act. In that, they included their Green New Deal, which included a lot of spending. But to add insult to injury, they also then put a tax on natural gas, something everybody uses to heat their homes, to cook their food. Every day, folks are using natural gas. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Democrats put a tax on methane, on natural gas. So essentially, what the CRA, Congressional Review Act, resolution that I'm putting forward does is it repeals that tax on natural gas. And, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, should have been called the IAA, the Inflation Acceleration Act, because that's just exactly what it did, taking inflation to 9%. Not only with spending, like the Green New Deal, but by putting a tax, if you can believe it, on natural gas that every single American uses every single day. That hits the low-income people the hardest. And to put it into perspective, since 1990, we have reduced emissions from natural gas by 20%. Now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Since 1990, we've reduced overall emissions by 20%. And in that time, we've doubled the production of natural gas. Do the math on that one. We have the best environmental standards in the world. And so the solution for the Democrats is to tax it, get less of it, and get it from countries with worse environmental standards. Beyond ridiculous. We're going to repeal it. So thanks to Republicans and President Trump, who's going to get inflation under control with a whole variety of things, including making America energy dominant once again, we're going to produce more energy here at home. Energy security is national security, it's jobs, it's economic growth, and it's going to help bring prices down for consumers across this country.
Questions for Senators Kennedy or Hoeven? All right, any other questions?
Can I go?
You're dismissed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was it appropriate for the U.S. to vote against the UN resolution that named Russia as the aggressor in the war against Ukraine? And also, do you think Putin can be trusted to stick to any peace deal negotiated?
Well, I've stated my views, I think, as you know, on who started the war. But I do think right now what we're trying to do is get a peace deal. This is a horrific war. It's gone on for 10 years with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of casualties. And the administration is trying to bring it to an end. And so right now, I think we give them space and let's see if they can bring a resolution to a war that has cost way too many lives already.
Some of your Republican colleagues have expressed concerns about the meat cleaver way that DOJ is doing cuts. Some say that it's lacking humanity, it's lacking compassion. Do you have any concerns about the human cost of the cuts that DOJ is making? Some of these federal workers who are losing their jobs, who have been working as federal workers for sometimes decades? I
think that any process you undergo where you're trying to find efficiencies, and if that involves some reductions in force, it needs to be done in a respectful way. Obviously, that's respectful of people involved. But I do think as they go through this process, the objective of DOJ is to try and figure out ways to make government run more efficiently, more effectively, and reduce its cost, and make sure that the American taxpayer is getting a good deal on the tax dollars that they put into the federal government. So I think, right now there are different tactics being deployed to do that. I would simply say what I've said earlier, and that is that we want to do everything we can, and I think this has been long overdue, to try and figure out how we can make government work more efficiently, cost the taxpayers less, and make sure that they get a good return on the tax dollars that they spend in this country. But I would also argue, again, that in anything that they do, they need to be respectful of people that are involved in these agencies and departments of government.
Now that the majority of President Trump's cabinet nominees are confirmed, should they be the ones making the decisions on personnel instead of Elon Musk?
I think that's why we work so hard to get these folks confirmed, and they're now in a position to make those decisions, and I think some of them already asserted that right to make those decisions. These are very capable people that are going to be responsible for running big departments and agencies and overseeing thousands of employees, and they ought to do everything they can to try and make their departments work more efficiently and to find savings. And in many cases, they are going to make those decisions on their own. And I think that's, if you've seen that already, some of them have asserted that right, and I think the administration, at least at this point, is providing some latitude for their managers of these departments and agencies to move forward.
Leader Thune, is a continuing resolution the only way to avoid a shutdown at this point?
We're keeping all options on the table, but we are running out of time. And so I think that, realistically, we have to think about how can we fund the government, make sure there isn't a government shutdown. And I only remind people that we are in this position because last year, even after the Senate Appropriations Committee passed 11 of the 12 appropriation bills out of the committee, the Democrats, under Leader Schumer, didn't bring a single appropriation bill to the floor of the United States Senate, and they were available for the last 6 months of last year. So we have a pileup right now created by the Democrats' own making, and now they are publicly talking about shutting the government down. Ironic, I would say, but we will do everything we can to make sure that the government stays up and running, and what form that takes remains to be seen, but we're working all the options. So thank you.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer criticized planned tax cuts and budget reconciliation. Appropriations Committee Ranking Member Patty Murray and Wisconsin Democrat Tammy Baldwin then related Republican budget plans to efforts to find efficiencies in government. Schumer was asked about Ukraine and funding negotiations.
Okay, thanks everybody. And for joining us, I'm proud to be joined by Senators Murray and Baldwin. Now over the last month in office, can we get a little quiet? Thank you. Over the last month in office, President Trump and Senate Republicans have not focused on lowering prices or making life easier or better for American families. In fact, they're doing the total opposite. Look no further than the House of Representatives right as we speak. As soon as today, House Republicans are going to attempt to pass a budget resolution that clears the way for one of the most draconian cuts of Medicaid in history. And it will hurt so many people in so many different ways in every corner of America. Why? Why do they want to do this? Why would they want to cut Medicaid? Why would they want to tell a community health center to close? Why would they want to tell a senior in a nursing home you're being kicked out? One reason, it's been their North Star all along, to provide tax cuts for their billionaire club and have the American people, unfortunately and sadly, pay the price. The Republican bill could cut $880 billion in just Medicaid alone, throwing 80 million Americans, kids, veterans, the elderly, to the wolves, just to get their friends big tax cuts. So last week here in the Senate during Vote-A-Rama, we pushed a whole lot of amendments. I pushed an amendment that said we should have no tax breaks for millionaires, and then I pushed another amendment calling for no billionaire tax breaks if even $1 of Medicaid spending was cut. And unfortunately, they were overwhelmingly rejected by the Republicans in the Senate. I'm sure in every state, those votes were very unpopular. It could have been the reddest of states. Donald Trump promised to bring down costs on day one. That's what he said. Day one, costs are going down. Prices and inflation continue to rise. His trade war with our allies is making it worse. Grocery prices up, chicken, pork, steak, all up. And while the Republicans are focused on things that either Americans don't like or don't care about, he said the first day he'd bring those costs down. And what'd he do on day one? Pardoned insurrectionists, many that went on to commit more crime. He focused on the Gulf of America, annexing Canada, changing the name of mountains. They're distractions. They're good at that. Why? They want to hide their number one goal, tax breaks for the billionaire club, while they destroy Medicaid to do it. Most Americans, of course, want government to be more efficient, cut waste. This is not the way to do it. This is not what Americans want. This is not what Americans deserve. Americans want lower costs, not less air safety personnel and more dangerous skies. They want lower prices, not our veterans starved of resources. And what's being cut? Firings at the Veterans Crisis Line, the 9/11 Survivor Health Program, parks across the country, all for the sake of helping their billionaire friends. In short, Republicans are all focused on the wrong thing at the wrong time. Under Donald Trump's Republican policy, billionaires win, families lose. Patty.
On Sunday, the leader of the Republican Party, Elon Musk, tweeted that he thought a government shutdown would be, quote, great. That's one totally out-of-touch billionaire who needs a serious reality check. Elon may never depend on receiving benefits on time, but for everyone else, shutdowns are painful and costly. Democrats, however, do not want a shutdown. We are at the table negotiating in good faith to fund the government. But Republicans are the majority in the House and in the Senate. If they want our votes, they need to work with us. We are close on top-line spending, but we need to know Republicans are willing to work with us to protect Congress's power of the purse. And I welcome any and all ideas they may have on how we can work together to do just that. That is the absolute bare minimum, and it's frankly not asking a whole lot. Republicans should not be so eager to let Elon Musk cut off cancer research or clean energy jobs in their districts. They should not follow Elon towards a shutdown. Now, even though March 14th is just around the corner, most Republicans aren't really focused on funding the government. And that's because their number one priority is passing more tax cuts for billionaires. Here in the Senate, as you know, last Friday, just before 5 a.m., Republicans rammed through their pro-billionaire, anti-middle-class budget blueprint. Possibly tonight in the House, Republicans are planning to do even worse. And to pass their massive tax giveaway for billionaires, they're going to defund Medicaid, slash veterans benefits, and force kids to go hungry. I want to be clear, the congressional districts with the highest enrollment for Medicaid in my state are represented by Republicans. There's simply no way to realize the trillions in cuts they're calling for without kicking kids and families off Medicaid. They are cutting health care for the children they represent to cut taxes for billionaires, hurting kids, making it so a child can't see a doctor, to give Elon Musk a tax break he doesn't need. If that's the path Republicans want to go down, then I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that. To the American people, now is the time to tune in to C-SPAN. Now's the time to give your Republican congressman an earful. Now's the time to text your family chat group. Now's the time to do everything we possibly can to protect health care for our kids and families. Every American should understand their story, and their voice will make a difference in this fight. Congress needs to hear you. So my advice is get loud. I will be using my voice and my vote to make sure kids can see a doctor, to make sure that kids do not go hungry. I'll be voting no to give billionaires more tax cuts while kicking kids off their health care.
Senator Baldwin.
5,373. That is exactly how many phone calls my office received just in the past week from Wisconsinites who don't want President Trump slashing Medicaid, who don't want the world's richest man to rig government so that he can profit even more, who don't want veterans' benefits or services being cut, and who don't want hardworking public servants fired for no reason at all. These are the people who recognize that this is just the tip of the iceberg regarding how Republicans are going to pay for their tax breaks for billionaires. Because at the very center of all these unpopular policies, what binds them all together is Republicans' North Star, a massive tax break for the wealthy and the biggest corporations on the backs of our constituents. Look, we have seen this movie before. Last go around, the Republicans gave tax breaks to the very wealthy. And in my state, one taxpayer, one single company got a bigger tax break than all Wisconsinites combined in the first year of that plan. That company was ExxonMobil, Just think about that. One taxpayer got a bigger tax break than every Wisconsinite put together. This time, the tax break will be bigger, and it will be paid for by taking food from hungry kids, shutting nursing home doors, and ripping health care away from kids and disabled Americans. Their number one target is, of course, Medicaid. No matter what my colleagues use as a policy cover, the end result will be the same. Elderly people will be left without care, vulnerable kids will be left without a doctor to go to, and disabled individuals without the help they need to live healthy and dignified lives. Let me quickly tell you about a Wisconsinite who reached out to me. She's a 60-year-old woman who was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and it's metastasized to her brain, lungs, and liver. She depends upon Medicaid for treatment. And without Medicaid, she said, and I quote her, she'd be forced to ration or forego cancer treatment, hastening my death, or send me and my husband into bankruptcy while trying to keep me alive. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. The Republican plan puts her cancer coverage on the chopping block. And make no mistake, it will rob seniors, kids, and the disabled to pay for the rich to get richer. It's wrong. We're going to use every lever we have at our disposal to lift up the concerns that we are hearing from our constituents. Band together and organize with them and fight to stop this tax break for billionaires on the backs of our constituents. Back to Leader Schumer.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Leader Schumer, we heard what you said yesterday, marking the 3-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. But what do you think is the path forward for the U.S. vis-a-vis the war in Ukraine? Does it make sense to try to negotiate a peace deal with Putin and Zelensky?
Look, the Ukrainian people have fought long and hard. We know who started this war, Putin, who's a bully. The Ukrainian people are fighting very hard. We should not abandon Ukraine or force a decision down their throats that they don't like.
Will Democrats support a clean continuing resolution if that's what it takes to calm the
Look,
government on March 14th?
we're negotiating right now, and I'm not going to get into the private details of negotiation.
Would you support a bill, though, that does not require Trump to use appropriated funds?
As I said, Patty's negotiating very well. We're not going to get into the details right now. Yes?
Lori Chavez, the Reamer, has her committee vote this week. She could need Democratic support to save her nomination. Have you talked to Democrats on the committee about whether or not to intervene to help her out there?
Let's see what happens in committee. Wait, I promised I'd call. No women have raised their hands. I only don't like to call on men, so you get the last one.
Are there any ideas that Democrats could pursue at some point this Congress that deals with waste, fraud, and abuse?
There's lots of them, and we want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Definitely, but you don't use a blowtorch. You don't use a meat axe and cut all the good things as well as things that are waste, fraud, and abuse. No smart businessman would do that. And I think what they're doing is just outrageous. It's hurting people, and I think the people in America are going to hate what they're doing, which is cutting people who are working hard and doing very needed jobs that help the American people. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without express written permission from FedNet is prohibited.